Hey there, this is Frank Klesitz with Viral Marketing, and I got a wonderful guest here today for a interview on how to build a sellable business and how much your database of your past clients, your centers of influence, your long-term nurture with your buyer leads, your seller leads, as well as managing the customer experience and how do you know if your staff is actually doing a good job with your buyers and sellers and managing that as well as maybe at some level you have to hire somebody to make the calls to your database to ask for referrals or repeat sales because eventually at some day you either sell it or you're not there anymore. And I'm so excited on the on this interview to have Jay Kender, who is a one of the very few real estate agents across the country who has truly at the very highest level exited his business. And we're going to interview him today about how to create a sellable business with databases and how important the database is and what you need to know to set your business up so eventually someday you can either sell it and cash out or hire someone else to management and you just take your distribution checks off the profits all the time. So Jay, welcome to the call, my friend.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. I appreciate your compliments. Definitely have the bumps and bruises and scars from attempting to leave my business 3 separate times unsuccessfully. So this is a topic I'm very passionate about and something that I've learned about the real estate business and that I think we should all be aware of is, we work our tails off, right? We work 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, building this business for years. This is, I think, my 17th year in real estate. And, the last thing you want to do is walk away from what you're building and not have any equity and not have a sellable business or not have an exit strategy of some sort. So we're going to focus today on, I know you're always ready with great questions every time I sit down with you. Right?
I'm just going to drill you, Jay, but you got to tell everyone here, for anyone who doesn't know who you are,
yeah,
and you don't have to be humble, man. Tell me what you've accomplished and what you've ranked. Come on, give it to me. Give me your ranking. How many homes you've sold. Tell me.
I'm a country boy from Lawton, Oklahoma. That's all it is. But to give you a little bit of a history, I guess, if you will, because I know I don't look like I've been in real estate 17 years, right? So I built a business in Lawton, Oklahoma, up to number 2 in the world for Coldwell Banker. I looked at buying my dad's Coldwell Banker business. He owned the franchise and ran a lot of numbers on trying to decide if that's what I wanted to do. Then I went independent back in 2000, I think it was 2010 or 2011, 2010 I guess it was. And basically started trying to get out of my real estate business. I had been 30 under 30 along the way. At 20 years old, I was selling about 531 transactions a year, and started really trying to determine how do I get out of my business, and ultimately founded Kinder Reese Real Estate Partners, which was a coaching company. From there, we morphed into the National Association of Expert Advisors, which is what we do now. And being in Dallas all the time, I wanted to get out of my real estate business. I had sold more homes than I ever really had dreamed of selling, and I had really accomplished, I guess, my goals in terms of selling real estate, and more passion and more fulfillment out of helping real estate agents to do the same thing. So that's what I wanted to do, but I had to be able to get out of my real estate business in order to do that.
Do you have a full real estate business in Lawton, Oklahoma right now? How many transactions does that business do now a year?
They'll do 300-ish every year. They have since I've been out.
And you got a business that does 300 transactions, and you don't really touch it. And you live in Dallas.
I don't touch it at all. I literally met 2 employees that I had never met before last time I was in the office, and that was a very awkward moment. By the way, what I'm saying, they felt like they knew me because they've seen all the videos and stuff that we do and everything else, but I had not met them. They've been working there for at least probably a month or whatever. So it definitely runs without me. And there's a lot of things I can tell you about what not to do, and it all really focuses in on we're going to get into the database side of things, but let me explain what I realized. Until you step out of your business, you just really never. You can say, okay, well, I'm going to step out of doing listings, and we all get to that point where we're like, I don't want to do buyers anymore, and then we just do listings. But we're really, if you look at a functional org chart of what are the functions in our business, in any business, when you look at who's truly accountable, you're accountable as the sales manager. You're accountable oftentimes as operations. You're accountable as the listing agent going out on those listings. You're accountable to overall customer service, customer experience. I mean, all of these hats, accounting, everything, dollars coming in, dollars going out, marketing, these are all functions that ultimately, generally speaking, we are all 100% accountable to. You may have people that do some of the work, but you're still accountable to the outcome of that. So if something goes wrong, who do you talk to? Nobody really truly owns it because we typically don't let go of things very well. So, I have done a good job of letting go of everything except for kind of that leadership position in the company and listing properties. And I had my schedule set where I would just go on listing, four to five at a day. And that was pretty much where my involvement was. I would leadership, leading the team, and really manage to go on all the listing appointments. When I started to step away, because I wasn't paying myself a market-based wage, I didn't know what the effect of me, I didn't know if my business was truly profitable or not because I treated it like my own personal piggy bank. So, I bought vehicles and did everything. I worked all year long, and my tax guy would tell me what to go buy at the end of the year because I, wouldn't be prepared to pay taxes, and did that for a number of years. And it just, whenever you try to step out of the business and then you disappear from it, a lot of things start to happen. And for me, what happened was I realized that I had no idea if my business was truly profitable. What was it going to cost to replace me and what it was that I did every day? So two things had to happen. Things had to be scalable in my business. It means it didn't have to be me. My presentations couldn't be about how wonderful I am. They couldn't be based on just how good I was at befriending people. It couldn't be based on just my ability to communicate how awesome we are as a team. We had to build it based on principles, and it had to be scalable that I could teach someone else to do it. And the second thing was I had to know what was going on in my database with my customers. I realized real quickly that when you're gone, when you're in your business, and everybody will resonate with this, when you're in your business every day, you feel whether it's a good month, bad month, if things are going well, the marketing's working, the lead flow, this and that and the other. But when you're gone and you're out of your business and you're not in touch with anyone in the office on a daily basis, then you start to freak out a little bit. Is what happens. You kind of wonder, is everything okay? And you're not. If there was no reporting, and everyone will probably say the same thing with this as well. How many reports do you have to get to run your business? From my listing department, closing department, marketing department, sales department, leads. I had 3 different lead sources. I'm saying, all these leads coming in, and all my past clients and referrals and lead sources for every listing taken and sold, and all this that you try to look at and say it's doing well or it's not doing well. There was no one place to get that information. Just what doesn't exist. Nobody built the technology for us as real estate agents that is this advanced, and the reason nobody ever built it is because nobody runs a business. Right? Most real estate agents sell 6 to 8 homes a year, and anyone who's going to develop a technology isn't going to develop it for people like us. They're going to develop it for the average agent. We call them the AFA, the average frustrated agent. So we don't have anyone that's really coming, and brokerages don't need this, right? Because what do? They give all the money to us. So they don't need to manage the customer experience. They don't need to see any of these numbers. None of that stuff really matters. And that was, the frustrating thing was I was like, I have no way of knowing whether A, my clients are happy, or B, if what's going on, the metrics, the driving critical numbers that are driving the business.
So let's talk about that, Jay. You have
right?
Your understanding. We mentioned before this call is the number one challenge of pulling yourself out is you never actually knew if your buyers or sellers were even happy.
Yep.
And for someone watching this interview, they're looking to get more involved in building a database and working a database. But if you have a bunch of unhappy people that don't want to refer you, don't want to give you any repeat business, and you're just churning them through, you're kind of losing your business. Now, you were telling me before about what, 40-50% of your business back in Lawton comes from referral and repeat, which is the foundation of the business. Lowest acquisition cost of a client is a referral. I mean, there's really nothing else that's going to be lower cost than a referral and a repeat customer. So it's really all about being able to measure the lifetime value of a client, understanding that your first transaction with them is not the end of the money that you could earn from them. Typically, that's a very small percentage of what they're worth over the lifetime of your business. And most of the time, me included. In fact, it was Jay Abraham that actually brought this to my attention in one of his events, and he said, he asked, how many people, raise your hand if you've ever gotten business by referral. And this was a bunch of different industries, so it wasn't just real estate agents. I was probably the only real estate agent in there. And so everybody raised their hand, and then he's like, how many of you have systems in place that track and automatically and through automation get you referrals on a regular basis, and you're able to measure that and this and the other. And how many, more than 2 systems, 3 systems, 4 systems? Well, everybody starts lowering their hands off. I started thinking, I was like, man, I've done like thousands of real estate transactions, and I had zero systems in place for any kind of track. Not only did I not know how many referrals I got, I didn't measure it. I had no idea. And this was back when I was doing a few hundred, 300 or 400 transactions a year. So I was like, ding, light bulb, right? Like, this is So
This
let's
is
talk
amazing.
about that, man. A lot of people may be watching this in the exact same position where it's like,
Yeah.
gosh, I haven't done anything with my database. What did you do at this aha moment?
Yeah. So it became an obsession for a year. And I went from 22% repeat and referral. We went back and tracked everything because we did track it on paper, but we didn't really have a good place to put that information or synthesize it. So we started tracking it in Google Docs. Many of you probably are familiar with the very sophisticated process of having people manually enter stuff into Google Doc. That's how we have to do it. Even still to this day, there's very little technology out there that'll do all of this. There's a few things that that have been advanced enough that we use now to make it a little bit better. But we started tracking all of this in Google Docs, and we looked at the numbers and lead sources and this and the other, and we were I was like 22%, not bad, right? I mean, it seems like a decent number. We weren't doing anything, and we were getting a pretty good number of people coming back. So that was an indicator that we were doing a good job. And I think probably the mistake that I make, and most people probably make this mistake, is they think that a 20, 30, or 40% repeat referral ratio, or repeat referral percentage of your business is good, and that you can't do any better. And so you don't think you're doing a bad job because they come back to you and people tell you they love you. So we don't do anything, right? So that was a mistake that I think we were making. We thought we were doing good, but we weren't doing anything to get that business, and it's a huge opportunity. So the first thing we did when we went back was we had to understand first where we stood, and we had to start measuring where the clients were coming from. We had to be, and I'll tell you the number one question that I changed, and everyone that's at a high level of business will definitely resonate with this. When a call comes in, as you get bigger and your company gets more and more recognized, and you have more and more business coming from all over, and you're doing radio, and you're doing all these different things, and you got billboards, you got buses, you got everything, and people will refer you, but you don't necessarily get that information. What I was always wanting to know is like, what advertising am I doing that's so brilliant that made you call me, right? Like, I always thought it was some of the dollars I was spending, had to be the dollars that I was spending, and it was the reason you called me. It was the first question that my ISA would ask, when we would get a call into the office. And we had an aha moment. We said, why don't we ask them, let's just change the question. Let's ask, who do we need to thank for sending us your business?
Great question.
It's a it's an obvious question, right? Like, but I wasn't asking it in the beginning. And so what in my mind, I was thinking, well, when you said you see the Hummer everywhere, you saw the billboards, or you saw radio, I was thinking, well, this is the reason that you're calling me, right? Mm-hmm. This is the reason you must have decided to call me. You saw the billboard and you were like, he's a genius. I'm calling this guy. Not what happens, okay? This is a big mistake, a fallacy that I had in my business that I think a lot of us had, that our marketing is so brilliant that it makes people call us. It doesn't. Other people of influence are who get people to call you, right? So what I learned was everybody had talked to somebody. Every single person that called my office, somebody had told them about us. It wasn't just that they saw the billboard or just that they heard me on the radio. That may have had something to do with it, or may have lended some credibility or some authority. But the reason was that someone said something. The reason
they took action on it was
exactly.
Someone endorsed you with some referral.
You're exactly right, and that was a huge. That was a huge aha. So that question at the front end was the very first step. So then we started saying, okay, well, now we're starting to track where this business is coming from. We need to thank people for the action of, referring us. So everybody knows a certain number of people that move per year. The statistic is, the average person knows 4 people a year that are moving locally. And let's say you could get one of those referrals, right? Let's just try to go for one of those referrals of every past client annually. What would that be worth to your business, right? It's a ridiculous number, right? It's an insane number. Well, I started doing all this math, and I'm like, this is a gold mine. We got to fix it, right? So, we really were able to lower a lot of our costs and expenses, what I thought was working, which was marketing and spending a ton of money, and we started reinvesting back into the people who were really, truly, genuinely blown away with how we did business with them. And, there wasn't everybody, right? We can always do better, I think, in customer service, but,
so reinvesting in them, you really wanted to improve the customer experience. And absolutely. That. Tell me how you improve the customer experience to reward referrals and to stimulate that side of your business.
I'll say this: when I was in my business, I measured it by sending out surveys and trying to to determine at the end, like we would give them a survey at the end of the transaction, and we would almost force them to have to fill it out. And then we would mail them if we didn't get them at closing. And we had all these different tricks. We would put the survey form in front of all the documents they get before they could log in and download their documents from the closing. So they had to fill it out. And
how'd that work?
We got a pretty decent amount, but we still only got maybe 20 or 30%. So we only got the really pissed off people and the really, really happy ones. The people in the middle, there's really probably don't even respond. So it wasn't 100%. So, but when I left the business, like I said, when I was gone out of the business, it became very obvious that I didn't know. I was worried that, I knew I was treating my clients right. I knew when I was there, everybody was doing the right things. But when you're not there, the first thing you wonder is like, is everybody else doing it the way I would do it? That's what you start to be concerned about. And I was like, we had no way to, really to know that. When I was in the business, customer experience was me, and it was my team, and I knew what was going on. So I didn't really make a change there to get to that, nearly 50% mark in repeat referral business. What we did that was, we just started communicating to them in a very systematic way. We started, on the back end, and I would say the focus at this point that made a huge difference was, with me in the business at that time, we added the customer experience position later. That was kind of an aha, we learned after the fact, and net promoter score as well, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But we started mailing to them just on a monthly basis. So what we did two things. We created a raving fan club. Mm-hmm. So, and many people, there's a ton of our clients that do raving.
Briefly go through what a raving fan club is.
Yeah. So the first thing you have to know is if you have a raving fan or not. And I'm not talking about raving lunatic, because we get some of those too. But a raving fan is somebody who is absolute scores you on so net promoter score it's the only question that predetermines whether someone is likely to do business with you or refer you business in the future. It's a very simple question. How likely are you to refer your friends or family to us in the future? And on a scale of 1 to 10, every one of us has answered it on a survey of some sort, right? We've all gotten that 1 to 10 dot, and you score it. So your raving fans are your 9s and your 10s. Those are people that are out there advocating, like, I love Frank. Frank is awesome. He changed my business, right? Like, those people are your best clients, right? You have a lot of those people, right? So if those people are out there being raving fans and they're people of influence, there's a very good chance that they're going to convince somebody that they need to call you, right? So those are people that you want to, when you look at your database and the value in your database, those people are worth more than other people in the database. Let me tell you a real quick funny story to illustrate this. When I first got into real estate, every salesman, I was like, I must have been on every salesman's list. They sold me pins. They sold me every stupid thing you can think of, right? And the pin salesman guy was amazing. That guy could close anybody, and I didn't know any better, so I bought pins. And none of that stuff made me any money, but I also got sold calendars, right? The calendar salesman got me too, and I ordered Dallas Cowboy calendars for the season for Dallas Cowboys, and I mailed them to everyone in my database. Well, guess what? Not everyone in my database is a Dallas Cowboys fan. Now, sure, I think everybody in it should be a Dallas Cowboys fan, but that's not very congruent if you're mailing that to everyone on your list. And so, even though I was a Dallas Cowboys fan, I had clients that we had, he's a Redskins fan, I'm a Cowboys fan.
You're like really good friends with them, and they hate Cowboys.
And it's like, so that's just it's so unpersonal, and it's so deep. It really brings the relationship down a notch. And if that was a raving fan, you definitely wouldn't want to do that, right? I mean, so think of, when you think of, what we do and how we communicate to our database, we have to know who are people that love us. We want to invest more into those people and less into the people that are not going to love
you. So you got your high net promoters, the people that love you at the end of the transaction. Yep. Then you have everyone else. Yep. I guess everyone's getting a monthly mailer of some type.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Your goal is this. So the customer experience position that I have in my office, you
hired somebody. So what I want to get to is that you hired someone full time.
Yeah.
To make sure the experience, you have as many high promoters as possible, so you actually get the referrals and the repeat business in the back end because you're not even there.
Yeah. So let me tell you first. The reason we had to hire someone to do it was because we didn't get it 100% of the time. And if I didn't get it 100% of the time, then how did I know that just the ones we weren't getting was the ones that you didn't want to call because you knew they were pissed off and y'all didn't want me to know about it? Okay, I'm out of my business, right? So I'm like, I want 100% accuracy. I want everyone to either answer the email and give it to us, or we're going to call them and we're going to walk them through it. Yep. And just and it can't be the person that screwed up, right? So when you think about this, it can't be the listing coordinator calling to get the Net Promoter Score if they're the ones that are not doing what they said they're going to do.
It has to be an external person so you get the true number.
Exactly.
Like an external person.
Exactly, an external person would be ideal, actually, and that's what we did in our business, and this is extremely valuable. But the guy that we have, he's his name is Pip. And I actually have my document here. You asked me to get my scripts, and I actually had Tracy in my office give it to me, so I have all of them actually for the calls that he makes, and So anyway, so this was something that really was a position that I needed so that I knew that the customer experience was as good as it could possibly be. And I have an amazing Net Promoter Score of 85. It baffles me how we've been able to do so well. But there's certain points in the transaction, and we've all experienced this, where you have a listing coordinator that's doing showing feedback and putting listings on the MLS, and you listed 40 houses this month, and you're like, guess what she didn't get done this week? She didn't make those calls. So the calls were always the first to go if it came down to it. So people, even though they say, "Oh, you don't need to call me," you still call them, because if you don't call them, they're like, "You never call me." So you have to call them, right?
You have someone that calls at the end of every transaction. Every buyer, every seller gets a phone call from your guy, asking him on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely would you be to refer our company to your peers for buying or selling a home? And then the follow-up question is, what's the primary reason for your answer?
Yeah.
Right?
There you go.
And then based upon the feedback, you segment them in your database, but they all have some type of long-term nurture program.
Yeah, so
way you get a report of how good your staff is doing, because that's the ultimate question.
Yep. And all I have to know is this. If I'm worried about how things are going in my company, I just have to look for one number, and that's the Net Promoter Score. It's 85. It's actually gone up 3 points in the last 2 years, which is really hard to do when it's that high already. But we've just done a really good job of measuring it and delivering a consistent experience. And that's we've all experienced it. My biggest challenge was like, okay, I need a second listing coordinator, I need a second closing coordinator, and trying to get everybody synced in. And when you're really, really busy, the calls. When I was really, really busy, I made this mistake, and I used to tell customers, I'm going to call you every week, right? That was one of my big differentiation factors. I'm going to call you every week, and I'm going to let you know what's going on in the market. Don't tell your clients that. Then they're going to expect you to call them every week. Tell them you're going to call them monthly, and then call them every 2 weeks. So, build value into what it is. You don't want to make it worse on yourself, and actually make sure I had to make sure that we position it as, I'm not going to be the one calling you. We have a customer experience manager that's going to, stay in touch with you throughout the entire transaction. If you ever need me, they'll schedule a call and make sure that happens, but you will never be you'll never feel like you're out of touch with what's going on in the deal, throughout the whole listing or throughout the whole buying process even. So with buyer agents out there doing things, you hope that they're doing the right things, but we don't know if our buyer agents are doing a great job or not, and most of us don't measure that. We expect the buyer agent to be taking care of that, but you can't let the buyer agent do Net Promoter Score, because they might lie.
Correct. And that's why you have someone full-time doing it. And I'm assuming you can outsource this to like someone that's outside of the company, or do you have it internally in the company?
Yeah, it's outsourced. Our guy's in the Philippines, so I mean he's the happiest guy in the world, and he does a great job for us. So I mean we're very happy with the process. So that's during the customer's experience. That's
during the
right?
experience. But now let's say you got all those you now have the report of the Net Promoter Score in your company as you exit yourself, so things are doing well. What are you doing to stay in touch with not only just those past clients as influence with your monthly mailers and items of value, I'm assuming you're sending out, but buyer leads and seller leads and just long-term nurture of a database? I mean, for most people, they don't capture any contact information and stay in touch. Tell me your thoughts on this.
It's paramount. It's the most, the value of your business is in direct proportion to your ability to communicate with your database. It really is. And until I realized that the value is certainly, if you want to have a sellable business, try to sell your real estate business and have no, you have one thing that they'll use on an appraisal to evaluate your business, and that's called goodwill, right? So that goodwill is what your business is worth, and you're not going to get a very good multiple if that's how they're going to value your business. So you have to have some predictability in your database. And
you have X number of people in your database to give me X number of deals a year just by calling me up.
Yep.
That's something I write a check for.
Yep. That's it. That's right. It's predictability. What people look for in buying a business is predictability. They want to know predictability of the cash flow that can be brought in. And to illustrate that, I was just kind of did some numbers and looking at my business roughly does It's a little bit less than this revenue-wise, but these numbers were a little bit more streamlined. So it does about 1.5 million. It really does about 1.3, but it's a 15% pre-tax profit, which is $225,000 a year passive income from my business.
So hang on. So let's step back for people to catch that. You're doing in Lawton, which your average sales price is 118,000. You were telling me.
Yeah,
$118,000 average sales price. You're doing about
Yeah.
300 transactions a year or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. About 1.2 million gross commission income. And
Yep.
you're paying all your staff. You've hired everybody.
Yep.
And you're bringing 15% to that bottom line, which is pretty good for a traditional business.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
if you're involved in your business, you'll hear 30% or as high as 50%.
And that's not really accurate. The biggest challenge I have in real estate is we're terrible at this. We like to make our numbers sound bigger than they are. But true profitability, if you're in the business, you should be paying yourself a market-based wage. This was a big mistake that I was making. The reason I couldn't step out of my business was because I didn't know what I was worth, and I wasn't paying myself what I was worth. So I didn't.
What it would cost to replace you to do the job at the same level.
So it didn't. Until I went to pay someone to replace me, I didn't know that it was going to be profitable at 1, 2, 3, 5%, 10%, or -3%, which is what it was my first year.
And that's something for what it's worth. It has nothing to do with the webinar, but if anyone's listening, you got to read Simple Numbers, Big Profits by Greg Crabtree.
Yeah.
And there's so many people. You take a salary to keep your payroll tax low of what, like $30,000 a year, even though you're the main producer. And then you take out the rest as profits, and it's totally messed up. I mean, gosh, I've heard some agents taking a salary of $150,000. So now they're taking all those payroll taxes, but they take that hit because now they can see a true picture of their business because they can step out. That's the true profit, and I can hire someone for $150,000 to manage the company. Yeah,
let me. Unless you have your numbers super dialed in and you are watching it like a hawk and you're paying in your quarterly taxes. Then that's the reason I was in debt. That was the reason I had in my company I had like $500,000 in debt because at the end of the year I would go and he would say, "Oh, it looks like you're going to need to pay this much. Yeah, should I go buy a vehicle? What should I do?" So, you need to go buy something since you didn't save no money. Well, that was unfortunately how it was kind of handed. I'm always investing my money back in my business, this, that, and the other, and it was my own fault. I didn't, it was my own fault, but I'm just not, we're not as disciplined as we would like to think we are as real estate agents. We're really good at selling, but we're not really disciplined. So it's not a good safe way to run the business. And when you pay yourself a market-based wage, you're looking at the profitability. Right, Greg Crabtree, he's speaking at our event this year. He actually built a financial model for our business in Frisco. He really has an amazing model for really looking at your business like a business and how you grow it and have the profitability and understand those numbers and talk to me like I'm an entrepreneur. Talk to me like an entrepreneur, not like an accountant. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's hard to find, but that book does it. It did it for me. It changed my life. I owe a lot to Greg Crabtree. He's excellent.
So for databases, back to the database side.
Sorry,
because we can go back hours on the financial side.
I digress.
All right. But from the database side, why you capture the contact information of every lead that comes in, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And you have campaigns to nurture all of them.
Yes. So there's a couple of things that you have to capture, and you have to have, every person in your database is potentially going to repeat. We always think about, well, I sold them a house, that deal's over, and that's how I used to look at it. Sold them a house, hope they come back to me, but I didn't really have anything in place to communicate to them over the course of time. And there's two things that you have to do if you want to if you're going to communicate to your database and you want to get the maximum amount of value and repeat and referral business out of your database. You want to be communicating both professionally relevant and personally relevant. Those are the two ways that you communicate. You have to be professionally relevant, meaning that you have something of value to offer that's related to the real estate industry. To me, that's being an expert in the market. Real estate, reports. We've always done reports that we deliver automatically through our database, and that was a huge deal for me. I became known as the market expert because I also took my Chamber of Commerce list and put them all in my database, and I started communicating to them the market data. I did market reports.
Send out like a monthly market report, whether it was a mailer or a video or an email or something.
Absolutely. A video would be ideal, but I was back then. We were lucky to be sending out an email, and there wasn't anybody doing market reports like local market reports. There wasn't anybody I could hire to do it. We were typing in the numbers into the spreadsheet. So we were doing that. And here's what I learned though: the banks in my town were using my market reports and making decisions on loans in the board of directors.
That's a compliment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, when I found that out, and then I started hearing banker referring me this and that and the other, and I started hearing about these builders wanting to get on my list, and it started kind of becoming it started becoming very a very big obvious. It was obvious there was value in it. So now with your database, you want to make sure you're relevant to them in their neighborhood. So that's at the very minimum, you should be the provider of information when it comes to the value of that property and their neighborhood. And that's what people always want to know, what's selling down the street, this and that and the other. So anything you can do through automation there is going to be professionally relevant. And for us, sell your home up to 18% more, that's what we do. That's our value, our value proposition, what makes us different. So there's that's professional relevance that we automatically communicate to people on an ongoing basis. The personally relevant is this is goes back to the McKay 66, which we call it hug fields.
Let's go back to the McKay 66. Harvey McKay is a guy that wrote a book. He owned the envelope company. He's like a personal help guru, and he came up with this. What was it? This report that his assistant would go to the library back in the day.
Yeah,
and fill out 66 questions.
Yeah.
About this one individual, and he had these 66 questions filled out for like everyone in his database.
Yep.
Google the
you don't have to do
McKay 66. It's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's pretty intense, right? It'll make if you think you're doing a really good job, it'll make you feel quite inferior. You don't have to do 66, right? The main thing
just to know something personal, some note, some blurb.
So Jack Canfield, we actually interviewed Jack Canfield a few years back, and Jack Canfield has a book called Hug Your Customer, and we call them hug fields in our database. And hug fields are just the value of knowing certain things about your client, knowing what schools if they're a sports fan and they're a wine drinker or they're whatever it is that you can find out about them. And generally we're pretty good about finding these, but we don't document it anywhere, right? So ideally what would happen is on their birthday, and we do this a lot obviously at NAEA, and we've gotten really good at it, is paying real close attention, like finding out what things people really like, and we had clients that like to run, right, and they just had
personally relevant gift on their birthday.
Yeah, giving them something
that comes up on your screen like, what should we send them other than just a standard card?
Yeah,
let's look at their hug field.
That's right, exactly. So and this all sounds like work, right? But it's really not. It's really not that hard. It's just paying attention. Like when you walk in and they've got a Oklahoma Sooner rug, you know that they're an Oklahoma Sooner fan. If you ask them if they got a degree on the wall where they went to school, they're that's where they went to school. There's little things you can find, and if they've got a whole liquor cabinet full of Grey Goose, then they like Grey Goose, right? So if they're buying shots at the bar for everybody and it's Grey Goose, then they're a Grey Goose fan. No, so anyways, that's the obvious things, and if you can just collect 2 or 3 of those, you can be personally relevant. So let me give you an example. So let's say you want to stay in touch with your database, and just on this is a raving fan, mind you. Until I was tracking this, I didn't know this. I did the math, and what Jack Mitchell did was he had the most sales per square foot of any shop suit as a suit tailor of any shop in the world at the time, and they had him on stage at a retail event, and they were like, well, how do you do it? How do you sell so much out of your little shop? And he said, well, I pay attention to my database. I know my clients. I know who my best clients are. And he said, how many of you in the room could tell me who your top 100 clients are? And nobody could even start to name their top clients. And he said, I can tell you probably my top 100, all of them, in terms of who spent the most money with me. And if you think about it, that's what businesses do. They know at Nordstrom's what color suit.
Like Harrah's and their casino levels.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
They know their customer, and with technology, more and more they know us. I mean, it's amazing. But if they know that if you like something specific, then you're able to talk to them in more relevant. So if somebody likes golf, for instance, if you've ever been to Stumble Upon, you can Stumble golf websites, cool golf websites. You could send somebody a link to a golf website, and that takes you less than 5 seconds, and it could be completely outsourced. You say, hey, I saw this site. I know you're a great golfer, or you like golf. I thought it was pretty cool. Check it out, and send a link to them. So it's easy to do something little, but think about the last time that somebody thought of you and sent you a little email about something that you like. Hey, I know you like. I'm a big, I ride four-wheelers. I love go fast boats, and I have a couple of guys, that know that and follow a little bit of that, and post something on my Facebook wall like, hey, I thought you might like this, check it out. And I'm like, cool, man. They're probably a boat fan too, like me. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and here's what I got to get at. I mean, this is the next step I want to move into questioning, is that clearly you have a system in place to measure, as you build a saleable business to your database, of making sure you have a good database in the first place for a
sure.
full-time employed customer experience manager, giving you reports on the net promoter score of everyone that comes out of the back end of your company who are buyers sellers,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then that's the first thing. Then the second thing is you have some automated emails and mailers going out for professional relevance about market reports, information about the community, Q&A about buying and selling, maybe customer of the month, whatever, going out to the database. But then the third thing you covered, which is the personal side. Now, it's really hard to automate. And this is where I want to get into, is that automation doesn't have to be through software, it can be through people.
That's right.
And would be really interesting for people on the level of their business that are really looking to exit it, is you hired someone that all they do is just that, and you hired someone to call the databases of your agents to ask for referrals, which is a big fallacy of maybe only the person with the relationship can get a referral. So let's take some time and let's talk about the transition you made into hiring someone to do just that in your business.
You're great at this. I love interviewing with you, Frank, because you're on your game, my friend. So this is probably the biggest aha I had, and I know that your clientele is definitely a more astute, probably more like we run our business than
they're business people. You're talking to business people here.
And we don't like to do our own videos and do all that stuff, but we know there's value in it. But we really we need to see the value.
Everyone else to do it someday.
Yeah, exactly. Get this off my plate as much as possible. Well, guess what? I'm way lazier than everybody that's maybe watching this, right? I am super duper lazy. I don't want to make any phone calls to anybody after the sale ever, under any circumstances. I don't care how many referrals they give me. And the amazing thing I learned, just to digress for 1 second, what I learned was my number one client was a guy named Dave DeBaca. You know who Dave DeBaca was? My painter, the guy that paints houses for me. We do redos and he paints them. This guy was referring me 4 to 5 people a year that were doing business with me, and I had no idea because I wasn't tracking it, right? So when Dave DeBaca, when I found that out, I was shocked. I was like, Dave, I drink beer with Dave. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know he was sending me all these referrals. So whenever we started tracking it, we did the math on it, and he was our number one person, and I started calculating the value of Dave DeBaca in my database. He was the most valuable person that I had in my database. And Dave got tickets he's a huge Oklahoma Sooner fan, huge fan. So he got 2 tickets to a upcoming OU fan when it came time for us to invest back into our people in our database. He got something very special because he was good for 4 to 5 transactions in a year. That's a raving fan, right? So in your database, you have to break it down. That's a raving fan. You invest dollars into those people because you get a good return on that. Not a lot of ads you can do that's going to run one time, and you're going to get you spend $400 or whatever, and you're going to get multiple deals out of it. Well, Dave's the best marketing I got. The guy's out there influencing people every time. What are they doing? They're painting their house. What are you doing? I'm selling. Well, you call Jay Kinder.
Call Jay.
You know what I'm saying? Kind of a no-brainer, right? But that was my number one guy.
But then you hired someone though. But you hired someone to make these calls, these relationships, man. That has to be so hard for people with the limiting belief that only I can call my database and ask for referrals, or only my agents and the people that hold the relationships can get the referrals.
Yeah.
That's something when you want to build a saleable business, you can't have that belief.
No, you can't. You can't have that. And nobody wants to make those calls as it is. I mean, I didn't like making them. And I didn't do
slow. You'd rather do expires or physicals or buyer leads.
It's so difficult. So it's not. You don't have to be the person making these calls. That's the thing is. Here's what I learned after the sale. Pip makes 4 phone calls in the first 30 days after the sale. Let me explain why we do this, okay? And to illustrate it, guess what? I have to tell you another story. So we call them Shannon Brown calls, right? So Shannon Brown. So I usually ask the question. Well, think about the last time you bought a car. Do you know the name of the guy that sold you the car, right?
Yeah.
I don't. I didn't know. I just bought my wife an Infiniti SUV, and I have no idea what the guy's name was that sold the car. And I mean, it was just a few months back. So you typically don't have any kind of relationship with the guy that sells your car, and you don't ever hear from him again, and this, that, and the other. Well, Shannon Brown, I started thinking. I was actually at that J. Abraham that same summit, and I started thinking about this. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I literally went to bed and woke up thinking about how much opportunity there was in my database that I had no idea. It was like I was sitting on gold and I didn't know it. I was like, this is amazing. Like what, and I started thinking, you always start thinking about, well, what are my personal experiences? Who have you ever moved mountains to try to refer someone business? Like, who have you been a raving fan of before? Like, I'm a raving fan of Shannon Brown. and I started thinking, well, why am I a raving fan of Shannon Brown? What did he do that made me such a raving fan? Because I want to replicate it if I can in my business, is what I was thinking. And I went back to it, and in 2003, when the first H2 came out, Shannon Brown, I went through this whole process. It wasn't amazing. Bought a H2 when they first hit the ground, and Shannon was a nice guy. He was their top sales guy in the whole company, the top guy in the state for GM. And Shannon had called me the day after I bought it. He said, "Hey, Jay Kendrick, Shannon Brown, Bob Warhammer, how you doing today?" I said, "Hey, Shannon Brown, how you doing?" Now, at this time, no numbers stored in my phone. I don't know. I remember Shannon from yesterday. He was a cool guy. I like the guy. Probably, no reason for me to be a huge raving fan. I mean, I bought a vehicle from him, right? He didn't do anything spectacular. So, and I'm thinking, okay, so Shannon, no, what's up, man? He's like, "Hey, how you enjoying that Hummer?" I said, "Man, I love it." He goes, "You take it off road yet?" I said, "Yeah, we did last night, actually. Whatever." He's like, "Hey, well, if you need anything, let me know, man. Just holler back, let me know if I can help you with anything. Oh, by the way, if you're thinking about maybe doing some upgrades, because I know you like to do, kind of fix up your vehicles or whatnot, let me know. I can get you a discount in the department, the parts department. Let me know before you go over there. I'll hook you up with a discount." I said, "Man, that's cool. Yeah, I appreciate it." So not only that was value, right? So he had a call, added some value. I appreciate it. It wasn't just an annoying follow-up call. It was something that offered a value that was relative to what I might possibly need. So then a week goes by, and I get a call, and he's like, "Hey, Jay Kendrick, Shannon Brown, Bob Warhammer, how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing good, Shannon. How are you?" Still, his name is not stored in my phone. After we talked for a little bit, he's like, "Hey, how are you showing any real estate in that in that Hummer?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, how do the kids liking the TVs and the headrest?" "Oh yeah, they love it, blah blah blah." And I was literally, he was being completely relevant to me, my industry, what I'm doing, and paying close attention. He's like, "Hey, if there's anything I can do, let me know." I said, "No, I'm good, man. Appreciate it. Nothing else." 3 weeks go by. So 2 weeks pass. Another call. "Hey, Jay Kendrick, Shannon Brown, Bob Warhammer." And I'm like, "What's up, Shannon?"
So he definitely has you in the call sequence after a
second. Yeah, absolutely. Like this, you gotta put yourself in my shoes. Someone who's never done any of this stuff, right? Never ever done anything to it for a past client. And I'm thinking about all this process that I went through is immediately where I went to in my head. I'm like, this was 2 years after this, and I'm like, then he called me again, and on the third call, he just was again, "Hey, is there anything I can do for you?" "No, I'm cool." So I stored Shannon Brown in my phone. I stored his name in my phone. And again, all this came from me thinking, think about somebody that you're a raving fan over, and I'll tell you what I did that made this stand out, and I've never done for anybody probably as far as being this much of a raving fan. It was almost comical. It is comical, but so I ended up talking to. So he calls me on the fourth one. The fourth one, he says, "Hey, Jay Kendrick, Bob Moore, Shannon Brown, Bob Moorhammer, how you doing, buddy?" I said, "I'm doing good, man." He's like, "Hey, man, just wanted to check in, so, make sure everything's okay on the Hummer. You don't have any problems or questions or anything like that." I said, "No, man, I'm good, brother. I'm good." But he's in my number now, so when he calls, I know it's like Shannon Brown. He's in my phone, right? So he's my boy now. We're boys. I don't know why I felt that way, just because he was genuine, right?
And now you have someone. You hired someone to do those 4 touches at the end of every transaction in your business.
That's right.
That's awesome.
You don't have to make these. You don't have to make these calls to make someone feel this way. You don't have to be the one making that call. Now,
what about down the road, like when you check in with them 6 months later, or maybe they're, for our clients, they're clicking on the links in the videos and you're following them up. Is the customer experience manager still the one following up with the past clients in the centers of influence, or is that a separate hire? That's more maybe like a prospector.
No, I think a customer experience person can be the one. I mean, they're really cultivating your database is what they're doing, and they're making these calls. And when somebody does something that would be an action that you think would be a good time to reach out to someone, like they click on the market reports in your email, or they click on a particular video that's about selling your home in the fall, which is I know something that you advocate and do and shoot videos for. When someone does that, there's a reason, right? They don't just have nothing better to do. It was relevant, right? Yeah. So either you or someone, and ideally not.
That's
you,
when you'd have Pip call on that, right?
Exactly.
And what would you have Pip say? And this could be one of your agent's best clients.
Yeah.
That's someone else is calling them for a referral.
Yeah. So Pip would call and say, hey, this is Pip with the Jay Kendrick Home Selling Team. I noticed that you had been watching a couple of videos online, and I just wanted to check in with you. Are you guys planning on making a move in the next little while? Well, actually, no, we're not. Well, if you were to move, would you be staying here locally, or would you go somewhere else? Well, then they'll answer the question whether they're not. So I just wanted to touch base with you and make sure there's nothing we can do for you. Is there anything we can do to help you? I know, and it's always you always place a call like this. Jay asked me to give you a call.
Yeah, Jay asked me to call you. This person asked me to talk to you. Yeah, leverages your name.
So again, so if they're a warm lead or Pip feels like there's an opportunity there, and we get passed on, and we would have
It goes back to whoever owns the lead, that agent.
Yeah, I don't make that call now, but the person that handles that now in my office would make that phone call. So let me tell you what happened though with Shannon Brown. The importance of the story. I'm telling you, I have to tie it all together. So I remembered, the first thing I remembered whenever Jay Graham brought this up was I remembered being at Outback Steakhouse, and I was standing there. And on the fourth call, he actually asked me to give him a good score on his survey, and I told him I would, and I'd do anything. He's like, and if you have anybody you think that might want to buy a Hummer, you need to, would you mind giving him my name? I was like, absolutely. So I ended up sending him about 7 people that bought vehicles from him between Cadillacs and Hummers. And I was like, damn, I'm worth a lot to this guy, right? Like, I was really thinking back to all the people. I'm like naming all these people that bought them from him, not just bought one from him. And they went to him, and I made sure they went to him, like pick up the phone and called him. And when I was at Outback Steakhouse, I heard a random conversation about somebody wanting to buy a Hummer. I turned around. I was in the bar area, which it's all really tight in Outback, and I was standing room only. I turned around. I get my phone out, and I was like, if you're going to buy a Hummer, you need to call Shannon Brown. Let me get you his number. And I'm thinking back to the story, and I'm like, why the heck would I do that? You know what I'm saying? Why would I completely
You're not
interrupt
getting a commission. You're not getting a deal on it. You just want to do it.
I was a raving fan, right? And we have raving fans all throughout your database, and we don't ever touch base with them again. Think about how valuable I was to Shannon Brown.
But I got to ask you this, Jay. There's so many people out there that when they're just starting off, you get in this mindset of I got to go after expires and FSBOs and buyer leads and cold business. I'm going to buy radio. I'm going to buy print. All great, right? But you have to admit, you have to come from a different place to shift that strategy of like that aha moment, because it feels like going after your past clients and sphere is just so slow.
Yeah, it's not.
Can you tell me about that transition that you had to go through?
There's a certain point. There's a certain amount of past client business, or a certain amount of size of your sphere of influence that really is going to be a big opportunity. And we haven't really talked about it, but there's a couple of measurements that you should have in your database that you measure. One is your client referral, your referral efficiency ratio.
Just how big your database is to how many referrals you get.
How many people you have in your database and then there's your past client repeat ratio. So someone who's done business with you before and repeats. So how many people do you have in your database that have done business? How many of them have come back? And then how many people do you have in your database that have sent you a referral? So this is your sphere of influence, and anyone who's a past client, your overall ratio of how many people are in your database that you're communicating to, and how many of them have sent you a referral. And that gives you an idea of whether you're doing a good job or not with the communication to those people. Mm-hmm. So those are 2 measurements you kind of have to have, and if you start measuring it, then you can start improving it.
Why not more? A customer experience manager, I'm assuming if you're going to the Philippines, can't be more than $8, $10 an hour?
Yeah, he cost me I think $700 or $800 a month.
Okay,
He's
so hold on. So you're spending.
Go ahead. My NPS is 85. 85 is a high NPS. It's pretty.
So your staff is obviously doing a good job providing great service, which you're managing because you're out.
Yep.
Pip is doing. So Pip is calling your customers, getting all that information. He's calling, asking for referrals. $700 a month sounds pretty reasonable.
Yes, it's quite reasonable. Actually.
Why isn't everyone doing this? How come we're the only person I've heard that does this?
Yeah,
I've heard.
I think it comes down to one thing. It's not because I'm smart and I'm some genius and I figured this out. It's because I stepped out of my business completely. If you want to really get a good idea of how to manage a business like a business, try not going into it every day. I mean, that's the best stress test you can ever give it, right? Mm-hmm. So that was the reason that I did it, and I started experiencing success with that. And improving the Net Promoter Score, and it really became, that's what my model is all about in my business now. It's really about that. And I want to say one more thing of value that we talked about offline, and I want to make sure we talk about it because you kind of briefly teed it up, but you know me, I'm all over the place. So your agents, right? So there's always this question, right? And this was my belief. My belief was I got to get my agents to call their past clients.
Referrals.
So I got to have some technology that will get my agents to call their past clients after the sell. And I'd get them all in here and be like, look how much money. I'm genuinely believe in this, right? Because I know that it works, right? But I got my agents, and I'm like, you guys got to call your past clients. They'll come back to you, and they'll list with you, and this and that and the other. So I put all these systems in place.
It's so obvious to you. You're taking all this training, and
it's
so clear.
It's a no-brainer, right? So all my agents, and I'm telling them they got to do this. And I'm like, I start recruiting around. I'm like, and then we got this system, and it's going to let you know, and you're going to call your past clients, and they're all going to come back to
Software
you.
is going to schedule it. We got the hug fields
Yes.
and everything. Yeah.
All you got to do is just make the call, right? So simple. We would, it's not that hard, right, to do. So, especially agents that don't have a lot of business, let's hang on to the few people that, that did business with you and loved you, right? Mm-hmm. Here's what I found. For years, I would push them to do it, and they would never do it. And I would look at their top producer back in the day when I was using it, and I would look at their calls, and they wouldn't be making them. And I'd go in there, and I'd kick them in the knee, and I'd be like, you dumbass, call your leads. Call your people, right? It's not that hard. Yeah. So they won't do it. If you want to try to get your agents to make those calls, you are going to literally want to kill yourself.
So now what did you do? You said I had to hire someone to do it because you're not.
What I did, this is the brilliance in it, is if they had a good experience, which can only be measured by having someone making these calls, not by whether the agent did a good job or not. Because if you get somebody that's a 6 or 5, you got to call them and fix it. Somebody has to make that call. So I have somebody that has to make that call. Hey, what do I got to do to get you to a 10? If they're unhappy at the closing, those 4 calls are all, how do I get you to a 10? What can I do to fix it? Mm-hmm. And I give my office complete. They can give up to $500 in any transaction. Give it back to them, whatever it is. Up to $500, you don't even have to call and ask me. But I want you to make decisions to try to fix these problems if we mess something up, truly mess something up. And then you got to know this. You got to just go put your head down and go to sleep at night knowing you did the right thing. If you can't make them happy and they're fucking crazy, you just have to leave it at that. But I used to lose sleep over it. I would be like, man, I did everything I could to make that person happy. But there are just some people that are crazy. They're just crazy, and you just got to be okay with that and know that those people are just not going to ever be happy with you, and just move on with life. And that was a big deal for me because I was like really passionate about making sure everybody was happy. So that's one thing. But the value is here's what people will do. People were walking into my office and they'll say, Reedy was my first buyer agent. And I had done 233 units before I ever hired a buyer agent. So when I started giving him buyers, he did really well because I gave them all to him. And people would come back, and Reedy had never called him and never seen him again. And we've all had that awkward moment where you're in the grocery store and you see someone you sold them a house, and you're like, who is that? I know, hey. You know what I'm saying? So Reedy was really bad about it. But they would never hear from him again, like most agents, right? Most agents never contact someone after the sale again, and unless you're in front of them with something, direct mail, email, something, then you're not. They forget you. We're just not that memorable. Now, the bigger we are in our businesses, the more memorable we are. Right? You're going to see a billboard. You're going to see one of my wrap vehicles. You're going to see one of my signs. You're going to probably remember to call me back, and that's why I had 22% repeat referral business because I was big enough that people would still see me, and they were
marketing would remind your people on the back
end.
Yeah, your lead generation on the front end was helping your back end.
Exactly. So it was it's a small town. So keeping people, that kept people to remember me enough to, and if they had a good experience, come back. Well, people would come in the office, and Reedy's office was downstairs. His is over here, mine's over here. And they would come in and they're like, well, yeah, we want to come back and sell our house. We bought our house for you guys, but I can't remember the agent's name. What was his name? Josh? No, I can't remember. This would be 4 years down the road. I would look over Reedy's office.
Uh-oh. I think we might have lost our connection. Hang on here. Jay, you still there?
Yep.
Oh, I lost you for a second. What happened?
I think I got probably too fired up and man, broke something.
No, man. Keep going.
All right, so Reedy's in his office. These people come in, and I had just got through giving him the pitch on why he needed to call his past clients. And these people come in and they want to relist their house. They didn't want to relist it with Reedy. They wanted to relist it with the Jay Kinder home selling team because they were who, and that's who I was at the time. It's Jay Kinder real estate experts now, but they wanted to come back to us because they had a good experience. They didn't associate the whole experience with just Reedy. The whole experience was with the company, and that was a big aha for me because I did so much to try to get my agents to call it back. But don't give up your lifetime value to your agents. Yeah. If the referral and the lifetime value of that customer is worth 1 referral a year for 20 years, do the math on that. If it's an average commission, whatever your average commission is, how much money is that worth, right? That one person at 1 referral a year for 20 years, you have an extreme amount of value. The value wasn't in your first transaction. The value's in the lifetime value. That's what's in your database. These people are worth that much money to you. Then don't give it to the agent and let them drop the ball. Make sure the company's managing that, and then when they come back, they list it with me, not with Reedy. I didn't give that back.
So what you're getting at is you have someone is calling the databases of your contract agents, looking for referrals and repeat business on part of your company, and it's all good. Everyone's happy. Everyone's the customers are happy. because that's a very limiting thing for a lot of people to hire someone else to make those calls.
Yeah, we think our agents are going to do it. They're not going to do it, and we don't want to do it because we're busy. And honestly, we don't have the time to do that. It's something that needs to be done, but it's not something we have the time to do in terms of the amount of things we can do in the day. And it's hard to make the value of this visible, right? So you call a FISBO and set an appointment today, that's an obvious person that wants to sell.
It's a direct ROI.
Yeah. So, but the real value in what you're building, and this goes all the way to the very first part of our conversation, which is do you want to have a sellable business? Do you want to have an exit strategy? These are the metrics, these are the numbers by which people are going to determine if you have a truly valuable business.
Jay, let me ask you this. Would you ever be able to exit your business to where you're at if you didn't have that past client database? I mean, how much of that past client database and that customer experience would you say as a percentage of all the other things influences a sellable business?
Oh, it's the only thing that makes your business scalable. I mean, it's the only thing.
So you're only going to pull yourself out if you get this thing fixed. Because
yeah.
I mean, if all that business, if all those deals are coming off expensive radio or TV or more of the cold lead gen, you wouldn't have any margin left. You'd be negative 15%.
Yeah, exactly. I was negative when I first stepped out of my business, and we actually did the math. I was negative 3%. We've been as high as 19% pre-tax profit. We're at 15 right now. So it dropped a little bit in profitability this last quarter, but it is what it is. I'm still very happy with it because if I can get a couple $100,000 with it's a lot better than my alternative. Because if I'd have stepped out of my business 5 years ago and not figured this out, you know what I would have probably got? Nothing. I probably wouldn't have got anybody.
So at the end of the day, the only margin you're really getting for your profit is, at all said and done, is the return on that database is why it's been able for you to exit, I would say. And if I was going to come in your business, you got the people, they can leave. Yeah, we got the systems, that's great, I got the systems, but I'm going to pay a premium for that list of people that keep calling you up that I can use a Jay Kinder name.
Yep.
And they're going to...
They don't ever meet me, see me, know me.
That's really cool. I mean, everyone has to know who you are, but they never never see you.
Yeah, it's beautiful, actually. And most of the time, you know what? I would have screwed it up.
And you've exited your business, and the name of your company is Jay Kinder.
Yeah.
You've exited your business, but the name of your company is still Jay. I mean, how many people ask, like, where's Jay? Do you get that a lot?
Yeah. No, I don't know if I get it.
I mean, the people in the office get that a lot? I don't know.
Yeah, I think some of my staff think, where is Jay? You know what I'm saying? I think they probably wonder that sometimes. But, I don't think that's as much of an issue. Because I'm not there.
I draw the parallel to Steve Wynn. I mean, Steve Wynn puts his name on his casino, but you're not going there to see Steve Wynn.
That's correct. That's the holy grail. I mean, at the end of the day, will people come back to your company and do business with your company?
Company, not you as the individual.
Exactly, and that's the reality. Is people are coming back. They are truly coming back to my company, not coming back to me, and it's not because of me. They're coming back to my company because of the experience they had with the people within my company.
And you knew how important that was. You hired someone full-time to make those calls in the back end of the buyers and sellers, get the Net Promoter Score. How often do you get your Net Promoter Score report?
I get it. I mean, it's updated daily. So, I mean, I always see it. It's actually built into our...
It's a live metric in real time?
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
and it's done by department, so I can see if one department is lower than our threshold or whatever. And I'll know if I'll have problems or not. So like when you list a property, you want to know did we go through the marketing and do everything we said we were going to do and double check everything, and either that was a good experience and the whole staging and all of those things happened and it was a good experience, or it wasn't. If it wasn't a good experience, I want to know. So that's where we got to catch it right then when it happens, because you can't fix it. When they go online and they see that their pictures are all horrible pictures and it's 4 months into the listing, it's too late. You can't fix it. That's the reason their home didn't sell. Now they're not going to buy a Net Promoter Score at all, and you can't fix that. But if you catch it in the first 10 days of it going on the market and the marketing has been looked at and has been approved, you'll be able to fix it right away, and you'll be able to...
I'm just curious, how many times throughout the transaction are you asking for Net Promoter Score?
Just during the listing period, when it goes under contract and after closing, those are the three. The same thing on the buy side. When it goes under contract, about 8 or 10 days after it goes under contract, and then after closing.
Well, Jay, man, it's been a whole hour. I know it probably went fast.
Hey, man, it did go fast. I appreciate you as always. You're helping real estate agents to solve a problem we all have, which is putting video in front of our clients in our database and being personal and being relevant and being out there and communicating with people. And that's
great. And people come to us all the time like, hey, I got to get a better return on my database. And I'm like, that's just the videos and the staying in touch and calling the people who watch the videos is just one piece of I love how we talked about hiring someone to be in charge of the customer experience, managing Net Promoter Score from a report if you were to exit it, and then
Yep.
hiring someone to make the phone calls to the database for you. And that
Yep.
person is the same position, right?
Yep.
And you're
Same position.
spending $700 a month.
Yep. $700 a month.
Jay, this is great.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, if I could package it and sell that idea, I would.
All right, man. Well, Jay, thanks a lot for being on the interview today. I appreciate you.
All right, buddy. Take care, man. Good.